the Detroit Lions. ESPN put out a mock draft, or just like a draft article, in which it has the Lions trading up from the 28th overall pick. And I know we have that write-up, JB. I will go ahead and read that. It's fun to imagine the Lions trading up to make an all-in move for top-ranked edge rusher Abdul Carter. You know I would love that, but that's probably not realistic.
Yeah. You have to move up a long way.
Which is why we're not even going to give that any mind, except for that fact that I just read it. Could they jump from number 28 into the teens for Mike Green or Shamar Stewart, though? Mike Green from Marshall and Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, though. This might be the time for Detroit to take a bigger swing on that second edge rusher next, especially with Hutchinson now eligible for what will surely be a significant contract extension. That is certainly some interesting musings that have been talked about. And that's why, because it was mentioned on ESPN, I'm going to leave this segment and the next segment specific to those players that they had just mentioned. And I am going to start with Mike Green, because they put Mike Green first. Mike Green is now my biggest crush in terms of the draft.
Okay.
I'll just say this on top of everything else, and you're going to get a chance to see it in a little bit. Mike Green's tape is the most impressive I've seen from an edge rusher this season, and even from some of his highlights last season, besides for Abdul Carter.
Okay.
It just jumps off of the screen. And I think his tape is even more impressive than James Pierce Jr.'s. And we all know, we already went over that, and James Pierce Jr.'s was very tantalizing as well. Mike Green, I would absolutely be in favor of the Lions trading up for. Mike Green, to me, is as perfect of an edge rusher prospect as you're going to find in this draft, other than, of course, Abdul Carter, who we all agree is unrealistic. And Mike Green may be unrealistic too. You'll probably have to trade up into the early teens, but because it's being mentioned, because we've seen Brad Holmes make these type of swings before, I am going to give you the why and then pass it around to my guys. Mike Green, you know how I feel. I want production. I want the PFF metrics. I want the talent and the combine stuff, and I want the tape. Mike Green has that all in droves. Production. Mike Green only led the entire bleeping nation in sacks and tackles for loss. And I understand he did it at Marshall, so that's a caveat, but let's check the tape back in just a couple of minutes, and you'll see that it's very impressive regardless of the competition. And some of those teams you see him doing work against might include some powerhouses, including one, Ohio State. The PFF metrics, 92.4 overall grade, second in his class of edge rushers. Pass rush grade of 91.4, run defense grade of 90.2, 20.2% pass rush win rate, which anything above 20% is absolutely spectacular. And for reference, James Pierce Jr.'s was 23, to compare prospects a little bit. And the thing about Mike Green as well is that his 2023 metrics and his season, he didn't play as many snaps, but he also had a PFF grade of over 90 in 2023, even though his counting stats and his snaps played were not nearly what they were in 2024. Now let's talk about Combine and Pro Day. Mike Green did not participate in all drills in the NFL Combine, but he did do the bench press, and his 28 reps at 225 pounds ranks second amongst all edge rushers in the Combine. His 6.85 three-cone drill, which he did at his pro day, not at the Combine, would have ranked him first amongst edge rushers, and his 4.25 second time in the shuttle, which he did at his pro day, not at the Combine, would have ranked him second amongst edge rushers in the three-cone and the shuttle. That really speaks to his agility. And you're going to see that because it pops off when you look at Mike Green film. And JB, if you want to go ahead and run that shit, you will see the team that he did his first bit of damage against. This is Ohio State. Look at that spin move. That's nasty.
Ridiculous.
Gets Will Howard on the ground. Look at the bend. Look at that bend and that speed to bury the quarterback, force a fumble. This one right here. Spins to the outside after faking to the inside, buries the QB. Beats tackle to the inside. Guard tries to help. Mike Green buries him. Mike Green right here. Look at that bend. Yeah. It's that bend to the outside. That's the type of refinement in his pass rushing moves that you didn't see from even a James Pierce Jr. He's got the bend, and then right there, takes on the block, blows up that run play. Absolutely textbook how he does that. takes on a block again after stunning the inside to bury a running back so he can stop the run as well. Diagnoses the run, swims past the tackle, buries him for a loss. The bend again for a pressure on Will Howard. Inside, buries the tackle, swims to the outside, meets his fellow defensive lineman at the quarterback, and then this one was just a pressure against Ohio State. And that is the end of Mike Green film. But when you look at Mike Green, this is what was so impressive about his film that I think makes it more impressive than a James Pierce Jr. Mike Green's got the bend. Mike Green's got the moves. Mike Green's got a spin move, which he showed a couple of times. Mike Green's got a swim move, which is effective. And did I mention that bend? How many times, like right there, for example, and then the speed at which he gets to the quarterback after he buries these tackles like they're his bitches is, it's tantalizing. I think he is as perfect of it, like I said, as perfect as an edge rusher prospect as you're going to find in this draft other than Abdul Carter. And unlike Abdul Carter, Mike Green, if the Lions were to decide to make a big swing, maybe Mike Green would be available in the early to mid-teens. And if this happened, I would be lathered up running down Woodward. I will just say that.
Damn.
Lathered up. A streaking Flannel Sam all lathered up in Honolulu blue
I don't know if
butter.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hey, remember that day? We were like, is that flannel running down the street?
I don't know if I want to remember that day.
Listen, but when you go into those interviews and they ask you, about your strengths and your weaknesses, and you go and you say, well, really, this weakness is really a strength because of this.
Yeah.
When you look at his draft profile, one of his weaknesses is he plays so hard that he occasionally runs out of gas. And that's something where when you look at the tape and you look at how physical he plays, how violent he plays, how disruptive he plays, when you think about pairing him with this defensive line, with this room, with Kelvin Shepard, a.k.a. KG over there in the sound booth, with a Dan Campbell on that grid, hey, you know what? They'll work out the stamina stuff.
Yeah.
That's on the organization to help with the development. But if all the skill sets and all the tools are there, it just brings my mind right back to the Ron Holland discussion, because that this guy is going to go out there and work. And so this is one of those things where it's like, oh, that motor's on all the time to the point that he will exhaust himself. Definitely sign me up, especially when you see this guy being able to not just diagnose the plays, as Flannel Sam pointed out so well, but being able to take on blocks and still have the burst in the stamina to get around the first initial set to make a play on the quarterback or make a play on the runner as well. So these types of players, I'm all for, and I think that when you pair them up with what we already have, you're putting them in even better position to have success year one.
And that's what you mentioned something that I think is really crucial, because taking on blocks and still making the play, or taking on blocks and having that be what ends up blowing up the play and somebody else cleans it up, that's really hard to do. Obviously, I didn't play a lot of football in my life, but in high school, I know I'm comparing my high school experience to a Mike Green. I played a little bit of a defensive end on the freshman team.
Okay, Sam.
A little bit on the freshman team.
Sam off the edge. Stop playing.
But
how many sacks you had?
None. I was terrible. I was absolutely awful. But one of the things that we did as far as drills are taking on blocks.
Yep.
My thing was, you can take on the block all you want, but you can take on the block and the block still be successful. You can, meet the pulling guard or the tackle right at the point of impact, but the running back still goes shooting past you. Yeah. You saw Mike Green multiple times take on the block in this highlight tape and just either make the play for a no gain, blow up the play so that the running back gets tackled for a loss. Those are the type of things that we know that this team with this defense, you got to be able to stop the run. You got to be able to make those plays. And I see that there's a couple of things in pushback that I see in the chat that I want to address. And I'm not mad at you, by the way. One of them is the whole Marshall angle. I'd be more concerned about that if you didn't see Mike Green's refinement on tape and you didn't see the fact that he was literally the most productive edge rusher in the whole bleeping nation. You don't do that by accident. You don't have that spin move that bitches Ohio State tackles, by the way, by accident. You don't have that kind of bend by accident. obviously you have some God-given skills that give you that ability, but that's something where you have to learn when to do it, how to do it, and you saw Mike Green use his speed and his bend at just critical moments to where he has just even like an inch on a tackle. Couple seconds later or less, he's just at the quarterback meeting him for a sack or a pressure. It's absolutely beautiful.
Flannel loves the band.
Yeah,
Flannel
he
loves
does.
and shout out to Hoof Hearted in the chat. He says, Sam Edgelord Flannel.
I was not that.
You have set the chat ablaze, man. I even see
No.
Xavier D in here as well. Two birds, both stones. Small edge energy.
No, I was a terrible high school football player, and I only played through JV. So obviously, I maybe shouldn't have mentioned that in any way, shape, or form in terms of Mike Green highlights. I was just using it as a point to taking on blocks is very, very hard. And you can do that in a way that's technically correct, but it's still not effective. And you saw Mike Green do it multiple times, and it worked.
And those are things. And when people bring up the Marshall thing, it's like, you know, being on the aspect of like the certain high schools and D2 circuits, you get a feel for just players and their technique and what scouts are looking for, especially even right now. Being able to talk to like Fred Cofield and some of the people that you guys have rubbed shoulders with at these games, you start to understand that these guys are looking for multiple things that go beyond what a lot of people on the surface are, and it is technique and it is work ethic, and that's two of the things that you hear about Green. And so to me, as long as he's at least showing that from a physicality standpoint, he's owning all of his matchups, and that technique-wise, he's putting on film more of these types of highlights than other players are. Like, when our guys do this, and I'm not talking about like our Hutches, it's generally like at best an arm tackle, or a running back is kind of sometimes running straight through their arms when they're getting that pressure. This is where, when I'm looking at a player like Mike Green, is where I'm like, you know what? Not only is he able to, you know, engage and disengage, but he's making full body hits, full body tackles, and just blowing things up in the backfield. You showed a couple plays where he was forcing some fumbles as well.
Yeah.
And so when you're not expecting him to be your number one, when you're expecting this player to realistically play a complement and play alongside a really nasty interior, if healthy, you know, we need a lean back, as well as what you got on the other edge with Hutch. That's why I'm like, why not with some of these players that are showing you they got the technique? And I do believe in what this coaching staff can do as it relates to coaching up some players and getting them ready development-wise.
Yeah, and one other thing of pushback that I see is that Mike Green is more of a 3-4 guy. But I would be more concerned about that personally if I didn't see Mike Green have his hand in the dirt multiple times.
Right.
And
he's versatile.
Yeah, absolutely. And even taking on guards as a part of his pass rushing moves. He is a defensive end. He is an edge rusher. Just because he played in a 3-4 scheme doesn't mean that he's a hybrid linebacker.
Yeah.
You would never mistake that with Mike Green. So I think given his body type and the way that he played, I think that he would fit into whatever scheme. And I do not think that that's a reason for the Lions to not draft him or not trade up for him, me personally.
Yeah, no, they had him running stunts and everything. I think he's a very versatile player. I really like this prospect. I still think James Pierce's tape is a little more appealing to me, but my overall concerns with Mike Green is, one, the size, because, you know, he's a smaller defensive end, and not to say smaller defensive ends don't work, but he kind of goes away from what Brad and Dan traditionally go for in their defensive ends. They like, you know, guys a little more, not to say he's not athletic, but a little more, you know, just on the freakish side of athleticism, a little bit bigger. And he does a lot of things well. Don't get me wrong. The only thing I would like to see him work on is maybe, you know, refine his hand movement a little bit, get a little better with using his hands, because the bend is amazing, but you can't rely on that at the NFL level, because, you know, we saw that with a James Houston. It can only get you so far. Yes, you know, coming in it might work, but eventually once they get tape on you, they start game planning for it. I don't want that to become something that he relies on. But overall, he's one of the better pass rushing, you know, prospects in this draft. His tape is unbelievable. I'm a big eye test tape guy. If it pops on tape, then, you know, you got my attention, and he did that in spades. He reminds me of another prospect in this class, Donovan Ezeraku, and while his stats are better than Donovan Ezeraku's, you know, he's of the same type of ilk, a smaller guy that can get home. You know, he's a little bit more crafty, and, you know, I think he would do good in a Lions uniform. I wouldn't mind if they moved up to get him, especially if they have a plan on how to, you know, improve him for the next level.
Hey, Donovan Ezuraku's a dog too.
No,
but
he is.
Probably
Absolutely.
more on him later. And you do have a point about the hand movements. That's probably something that you didn't see as much from him last year. You saw a lot of bend. You saw a lot of spin moves. You saw a little bit of
He's got some moves. He just got to refine.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that he's, like I said, I don't want to be a broken record, but in terms of realistic edge rusher prospects that the Lions could potentially trade up for, which means that he's not going to be a top 5 pick like Abdul Carter will be, Mike Green's the one. If you're going to trade up, if you're Brad Holmes and you're going to trade up, I would like for it to be for Mike Green. I think that he comes right in. I said the same thing with James Pierce, and I'm going to say with a Mike Green. If you put Mike Green on this defensive line opposite Aiden Hutchinson, that's less pressure. He's going to be seeing one-on-ones, especially as Aleem McNeil comes back, and hopefully some of the other defensive interiors like Levi and DJ Reader stay healthy. Mike Green is going to be in a position to just see quarterback, kill quarterback, beat one tackle a lot of times.
Just like his weakness is just play all out. And now we can put you in situations where you're going to be facing less pressure than you did at Marshall, but you get to utilize that full motor to the fullest. It's like, go out there and run yourself out of gas now. I would definitely.
I think Sam making a great point right there, because his upside as a potential every down, defensive end, it might not be there right away, but coming into the league, if you can make him just a passing, down specialist, I think that works wonders with what the Lions have going on. Especially you got Marcus Davenport on that other side. If you wanted to maybe start Davenport again, I wouldn't be as mad about it if you have somebody like a Mike Green there, for passing down situations.
Yeah, and just obviously I've heard you mention James Pierce, and when you're talking about trading up, just to kind of put these things in some order, because I know that you would probably trade up even higher to get a James Pierce than you would to potentially get a Mike Green. Where would you, if Mike Green falls in this draft, especially considering the fact that it's going to be a pretty talented class as it relates to pass rush? So where are you saying, that's probably where I'm trading up and get Mike Green?
Probably the 15-ish, 15 to 20. I think that's probably where Mike Green will go, and even somebody like a James Pierce, I don't expect them to go within the first 15 picks, but once you get to 15, I think more teams are looking at defensive help at that point, and that's probably a good spot to where you can at least start making some phone calls.
I am going to go to 15. If he gets to 15, Brad Holmes should be on the phone immediately. Anything before that, if Mike Green ends up being the 11th overall pick in the draft, or the 12th, or the 13th, I can live with that. 100%. But if he gets to the 15th and Brad Holmes doesn't trade up, that will be my first question of the day. But then again, we all know that Brad Holmes, if he makes a good pick at 28, it's not going to matter eventually. But that'll just be my thing. If he's at 15, I think Brad Holmes should go get him.
I think you all might have persuaded the chat as well, too, given our poll that we got going on right now. 54% want Mike Green over Abdul Carter right now.
Oh, wow. Shit.
That's a little aggressive.
Yeah, it is.
But then again, what you'd have to give up for Abdul Carter.
Considering the notion. And who knows? I hear it kicked around. I've heard it from several different national outlets, including now the ESPN one that just says Abdul Carter will look nice, but it's a long shot. Sometimes I just want to know, what would the long shot actually look like, and would it be worth it for a player like that? Because
just
when we talked about Hendrickson, when we talked about Garrett, Abdul Carter is one of those ones that's like, man, I know it's the dream.
He's arguably the number 1 pick in the draft. Yeah. I think you would have to give up next year's first and probably another first or second.
It's so deep of a draft.
And that's why I wouldn't, if they were to move up and get Abdul Carter, absolutely, I'm on board. Sign me the fuck up. But listen, it's just from a realistic standpoint, there is so much defense in this draft, then I don't want to give up the farm just to move up into the top 5, if that makes sense.
That's fair.
That's fair.
There's so much defensive help in this draft.
And hey, if you like us breaking down Mike Green, we've got another prospect to talk about, because there was another name that was mentioned in this ESPN write-up. What Mr. Shamar Stewart of Texas A&M. Find out how we feel about him. Find out how we will feel about the potential of the Lions trading up for him at the other side of the break. But tell us about Dr. Pierce.
That's it.